Thunder rolls across the Montana territory as Sarah clutches her newborn twins, stumbling through the muddy streets of Fort Bennett. Behind her, doors slam shut, windows darken. Yesterday, she was a respected settler's wife. Today, she's an outcast, branded by superstition. Her baby's cries echo off wooden walls as rain soaks through her shawl. In the gathering darkness, a lone figure appears, tall, proud, wrapped in a buffalo robe. Standing before her is Gray. Wolf, a crow warrior whose gentle eyes hold no judgment, only understanding. He extends his hand, offering what her own people denied: shelter, acceptance, family. But in a land where two worlds collide with deadly consequence, can love truly bridge the ancient divide between their peoples? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 months earlier, Sarah sat in her cozy cabin, fingers tracing the worn leather binding of her family Bible. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating the carefully inked names of generations past. Her own marriage to Thomas Bennett was recorded there, fresh and hopeful, next to the pressed flowers from her wedding day. "The baby's kicking strong," she told Thomas as he returned from the fields, his face weathered from working the harsh Montana soil. He smiled then, crossing the room to place his hand on her swollen belly. Such simple joy before they knew what was growing inside her. The first whispers started at the general store. Sarah noticed Mrs. Peterson's quick step backward when their paths crossed, the way she clutched her own toddler closer. "Twins run in her mother's line," the older woman had whispered to Mrs. Miller. "You know what they say about twin births." Sarah didn't know then. She'd grown up in Boston, far from the superstitions that ruled frontier life. But she learned quickly enough. Each Sunday, Pastor Matthew's sermons grew darker, filled with warnings about witchcraft and divine punishment. Thomas started attending alone, returning with shadows in his eyes. Their small cabin grew quieter. Where once Thomas had spoken eagerly of their child's future, now he worked longer hours in the fields, returning only after Sarah had gone to bed. The few times their eyes met across the dinner table, she saw fear mixing with something else, a growing certainty that their life together was cursed. The family Bible became her sole comfort. At night, she would read the passages her mother had marked, trying to find strength in the familiar words. But even there, she found darkness. Someone, Thomas's mother, she suspected, had added annotations in the margins. Next to the story of Jacob and Esau, twins bring strife. Beside the tale of Cain and Abel, double births mark the devil's work. Sarah watched her husband drift away, powerless to stop it. The same community that had welcomed them so warmly 2 years ago now crossed the street to avoid her path. Women who had shared recipes and quilting circles now huddled in whispered groups, their eyes following her growing belly with mixture of fear and fascination. Only Dr. Harrison showed her kindness, though even his scientific assurances carried a note of concern. "Twins are perfectly natural," he'd said during her last visit, though he'd glanced at the door as if expecting angry townspeople to burst in. "But perhaps it would be better if you stayed home until the birth." She followed his advice, watching the world through her window as autumn painted the prairie gold. Thomas moved his bedding to the barn, claiming the cabin had grown too cramped. The family Bible remained her only companion, its pages now spotted with tears as she prayed for understanding, for acceptance, for any sign that her children would be welcomed into this harsh world. The labor pains began on a stormy night. Thunder masking her cries. Thomas fetched Dr. Harrison, then waited outside with the other men of the town, their faces grim in the lamplight. Inside, Sarah fought to bring her babies into the world, each push a battle against nature and superstition. When the first cry split the air, followed minutes later by a second, she heard the murmurs outside grow into a roar of protest. Through The window, she glimpsed torches being lit, heard the pastor's voice raised in prayer against evil. Dr. Harrison worked quickly, cleaning the twins, a boy and a girl, both perfect and healthy, but his hands shook as he wrapped them in blankets. "Sarah," he whispered, "you need to leave now. Take the back door. I'll try to buy you time." She looked to the family Bible one last time, its records of births and deaths and marriages now seeming like a cruel joke. The last entry would be her children's birth, marked not with joy but with shame and fear. As she gathered her babies, close, preparing to step into the storm, she left the Bible behind. Let them write what they would of her story. She would write her own future now, even if it meant walking away from everything she'd ever known. Sarah's fingers clutched the hand-stitched baby blankets she'd spent months making. Each careful stitch, a prayer for her children's future. One blue, one pink. She'd made both, just in case, never imagining she'd need them both at once. Now they were all she had to wrap her newborns against the bitter Montana wind. Through the clinic's back window, she could hear the crowd gathering. Pastor Matthew's voice rose above the others, quoting scripture twisted to serve fear. And the Lord said, "Mark those who bring forth abomination, for they shall be cast out among the heathens." "Thomas," she heard someone shout, "your duty before God is clear." Dr. Harrison pressed a small bundle into her hands, clean cloths, a tin of condensed milk, what little medicine he could spare. "The storm will cover your tracks," he whispered. "Head east along the creek. There's an abandoned trapper's cabin about 3 miles out." The twins stirred against her chest, their tiny faces scrunching in confusion at the chaos around them. She hadn't even had time to name them properly. In her heart, she'd been calling them faith and hope, though both seemed in short supply. Now, the back door creaked open, and Thomas stood there, his face a mask of torment. For one brief moment, Sarah saw a flicker of the man she'd married, the one who'd promised to love and protect her through all trials. "Thomas, please," she whispered. "They're your children, your blood." He took one step forward, hands reaching out, then stopped as Pastor Matthews appeared behind him. "Remember your immortal soul, Thomas Bennett. Remember what happened to the Miller family when they harbored a witch." Sarah had heard the whispered stories. The Millers' barn burning mysteriously, their crops failing, their youngest child falling ill, all because they'd given shelter to a woman accused of witchcraft. Now she saw the same fear in Thomas's eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, stepping back. "May God have mercy on your soul." The crowd's voices grew louder, and Sarah saw torchlight flickering. Through the front windows, Dr. Harrison grabbed her arm. "Now, Sarah, go now." She clutched her babies closer, the carefully stitched blankets their only shield against what was to come. Faith began to cry, her tiny wails echoing off the clinic. Walls. Hope, as if sensing the need for silence, remained eerily quiet. Sarah slipped into the rain-soaked night, each step taking her further from the life she'd built. Behind her she heard the clinic door crash open, angry voices calling her name. The storm's fury matched her own heart, thunder rolling across the sky like God's own judgment. The creek was swollen with rain, its banks treacherous in the darkness. Sarah picked her way carefully, knowing a single misstep could mean disaster. The twins' blankets grew heavy with rain, but she couldn't stop to wring them out. Those precious stitches, sewn with such love and hope, now served as the only barrier. Between her babies and the elements, lightning flashed, illuminating the path ahead. In that brief moment of clarity, Sarah saw her future stretching before her, uncertain, terrifying, but somehow filled with possibility. These blankets she'd made, intended for a life of settled comfort, would now serve a different purpose. They would become part of a new story, one not written in any family Bible. The sounds of pursuit grew distant, muffled by rain and thunder. Still, Sarah pressed on, her world narrowed to the weight of her children against her chest and the squelch of mud beneath her feet. Each step was a small victory, a denial of the fate her neighbors had tried to write for her. Faith and hope slept now, rocked by their mother's determined stride. The blankets, despite their sodden state, still carried the faint scent of home, lavender, and wood smoke, memories of a life now lost. Sarah held on to that scent, let it remind her that she was more than what they called her. She was a mother, a survivor, and she would find a way forward even if she had to forge the path herself. Thunder cracked overhead, and in its wake she heard something else, hoofbeats. Her heart froze. Had the townspeople mounted a proper search? Already? She looked frantically for cover, but the creek banks offered little shelter. The twins stirred, perhaps sensing their mother's fear. Then, through the curtain of rain, a figure emerged, tall, proud, wrapped in a buffalo robe. Not one of the settlers at all, but someone else entirely. Someone whose eyes held no fear, no judgment, only a deep and unexpected understanding. Grey Wolf touched the medicine bundle at his chest, feeling the sacred objects within press against his heart. Eagle feather for vision, wolf tooth for courage, stone from the sacred mountain for wisdom, each item chosen with care, blessed by the medicine man who had guided him since childhood. Now, in the storm's fury, he sought their guidance more than ever. The woman before him clutched 2 infants to her breast, their sodden blankets doing little to shield them from the elements. Her eyes held no fear of him, only exhaustion and a desperate kind of hope. Behind her, distant torchlight flickered through the rain, accompanied by angry voices carrying on the wind. His fingers traced the wolf tooth through the bundle's leather wrapping. The wolf protects its pack, even adopts lost cubs when necessary, but taking in settlers, even cast-out ones, could bring trouble to his people. "They will kill them," the woman said softly, as if reading his thoughts. "My babies. They think." Twin births are evil spirits. Grey Wolf's hand stilled on his medicine bundle. Among his people, twins were considered blessed by the Great Spirit. 2 souls choosing to enter the world together, bringing double fortune to their family. He had lost his own twin sister in childhood, and the empty space beside him had ached ever since. The eagle feather shifted against his chest. Eagle medicine taught one to see clearly, to look beyond surface appearances to the truth beneath. What he saw before him was no witch, no evil spirit, just a mother fighting for her children's survival. Lightning split the sky, and in its brief illumination, Grey Wolf saw something that made his breath catch. The girl-child's eyes were open, and they were the exact shade of amber his sister's had been. The stone from the sacred mountain grew warm against his skin. "I am called Grey Wolf," he said in careful English, taught to him by the missionaries who sometimes visited their camps. "These little ones, they are your blood." The woman nodded, her arms tightening protectively around her bundles. "My son and daughter, born this night." Another wolf teaching. The pack survives by adapting, by knowing when to change old ways. His people had already seen too much death, too many families torn apart by the settlers' wars and diseases. Perhaps it was time for a different path. "Deshu." Voices grew closer. Grey Wolf could make out individual words now. Witch and demon spawn carried on the wind. His decision crystallized like frost on morning grass. "There is shelter," he said, "with my people, but the path is not easy. Some will not welcome you." Hope flickered in the woman's eyes. "No path could be harder than the one behind me." Grey. Wolf removed his buffalo robe, wrapping it around the woman and her children. The medicine bundle pressed between them for a moment, and he felt a surge of certainty. The sacred objects had never led him astray. "I am Sarah," she whispered. "And these are—" She paused, looking down at her twins. "These are Faith and Hope." "Good names," Grey Wolf replied. "Names of power." He helped her mount his horse, noting how she managed to keep both babies secure despite her exhaustion. A mother's strength, he thought, remembering his own mother's fierce protection. As they rode through the storm, Grey Wolf's medicine bundle bounced steadily against his chest. Eagle feather for the vision to see beyond prejudice. wolf tooth for the courage to protect the innocent, sacred stone for the wisdom to know when tradition must bend rather than break. The rain began to ease as they approached his people's camp. Sarah had fallen into an exhausted sleep, the twins quiet against her chest. Grey Wolf touched his medicine bundle one final time, preparing for the challenges ahead. He would need all three medicines, vision, courage, and wisdom, to forge this new path. But as the first teepees came into view through the lifting storm, he felt a sense of rightness settle over him. The Great Spirit had put this small family in his path for a reason. Now it was up to him to help them find their place in a world that seemed to have no place for them. Dawn broke over the crow camp as Grey Wolf's horse carried its unlikely passengers through the morning mist. Sarah stirred from her exhausted slumber, taking in the sight of teepees rising like ancient mountains against the pale sky. The twins, somehow sensing the gravity of the moment, remained quiet in their rain-dampened blankets. Mourning Dove, Grey Wolf's mother, stood outside her teepee, her lined face revealing nothing as she watched their approach. In her hands, she held something Sarah didn't recognize, a beautifully decorated wooden frame with intricate beadwork catching the early light. "My son brings trouble," Mourning Dove said in Crow, her eyes moving from Sarah to the infants. "The settlers will follow." Grey Wolf dismounted, helping Sarah down with careful hands. "The settlers cast them out," he replied. "They fear what we celebrate." Mourning Dove's expression shifted subtly as she looked more closely at the twins. "Two spirits entering the world together," she murmured, stepping forward. Her fingers brushed. "The cradle board she held, like you and your sister once were." Other members of the tribe emerged from their teepees, drawn by the unusual scene. Sarah felt their eyes upon her, but their gazes held curiosity rather than the hatred she'd fled. Still, whispers spread through the gathering crowd. "The council must speak," declared Standing Bear, one of the tribal elders, his voice carrying across the morning air. "This is not our way, taking in settlers." Grey Wolf stood straighter, his medicine bundle catching the rising sun. "Then let us speak to the council. But first, these little ones need warm wrappings, and their mother needs rest." Mourning Dove moved forward, her previous hesitation giving way to practical concern. "Bring them to my teepee," she said in halting English, addressing Sarah directly. She held up the cradle board, "For the baby's safe place." Sarah looked at the unfamiliar object with uncertainty. The cradle board was unlike anything she'd seen in the settler communities. A flat wooden frame with a protective arch over where the baby's head would rest, decorated with geometric patterns in blue and white beads, with soft deerskin bindings. Seeing her confusion, Mourning Dove demonstrated with gentle hands how the babies would be secured safely, able to observe the world while staying warm and protected. "Many generations of crow babies grew strong this way," she explained, "including my son and his sister." The mention of Grey Wolf's sister caught Sarah's attention. She glanced at him questioningly, but his face had turned distant, touched by an old sorrow. Inside Mourning Dove's teepee, the air was warm and smelled of sweet grass. With practiced movements, the older woman helped Sarah place first faith, then hope, into cradle boards that seemed to have been waiting for just this purpose. The twins, instead of fussing at the strange new confinement, settled peacefully, their eyes tracking the patterns of light filtering through the teepee's smoke hole. "They know," Mourning Dove said softly. "They remember the old ways in their spirits." Outside, they could hear the council gathering. Grey Wolf's voice rose occasionally above the others, speaking with passion about signs and omens, about the sacred nature of twins, about the need to adapt to changing times. Sarah wanted to join them to speak for herself, but exhaustion weighed on her like a heavy blanket. Mourning Dove seemed to sense this, gesturing to a pile of soft furs. "Rest. The men will talk, but it is the mothers who decide." As Sarah drifted into an uneasy sleep, she watched her twins in their cradle boards. They looked so natural there, as if they'd found a place they were always meant to be. The geometric patterns of the beadwork seemed to tell a story she was just beginning to understand, one of tradition and adaptation, of endings and new beginnings. A woman's voice rose in song outside, soon joined by others. Morning Dove, seeing Sarah's questioning look, smiled. They sing the welcome song for new babies. Your little ones bring good medicine to our people. Even those who doubt will see in time. Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks, but for the first time since the twins' birth, they were tears of relief rather than fear. Here, in this place so different from everything she'd known, her children weren't viewed as a curse, but as a blessing. The cradle boards that held them were more than just practical objects. They were a symbol of acceptance, of being caught up into a tradition that measured time in generations rather than moments. Grey Wolf appeared in the teepee's entrance, his face brightening as he saw the twins in their cradle boards. "The council has questions," he said, "but first they wish to bless the little ones. Will you allow it?" Sarah looked at her children, so peaceful in their new wrappings, then at Morning Dove's encouraging face. "Yes," she said, "we would be honored." Sarah's settler boots lay abandoned in the corner of Morning Dove's teepee, their cracked leather a reminder of her desperate flight through the storm. For 2 weeks, she'd gone barefoot, or worn borrowed moccasins that didn't quite fit, focusing instead on learning to care for the twins in the Crow way. Rising Star, Grey Wolf's sister-in-law, watched Sarah's awkward steps with growing concern. "The earth teaches through our feet," she said one morning, setting aside her beadwork. "But first, the feet must be properly dressed." That evening, as Sarah nursed the twins by the fire, Rising Star presented her with a pair of expertly crafted moccasins. The beadwork told a story in blues and whites, 2 parallel lines joining together, surrounded by symbols Sarah was beginning to recognize as protection signs. "For your new path," Rising Star explained, helping Sarah slip them on. "My brother chose well, bringing you here. The twins have brought light to his eyes again." Sarah glanced across the camp where Grey Wolf sat with Hope, cradled in his arms, telling her stories in his native tongue. Faith dozed nearby in her cradle board, peaceful under his watchful gaze. Something warm stirred in Sarah's chest. At the sight, he lost his twin, Sarah said softly, remembering fragments of conversations overheard. "In childhood." Rising Star nodded, adding another protection symbol to her current beadwork. "The fever took Running Fawn when they were 7 summers old. Grey Wolf survived, but part of his spirit walked with her. Until now." The moccasins felt different from any footwear Sarah had known, soft yet sturdy, connecting her to the earth. In a new way. Each step became a lesson in balance, in feeling the ground beneath her feet, in walking more lightly upon the earth. Little Bird, one of the tribal grandmothers, began teaching Sarah the women's daily tasks. With her new moccasins, Sarah learned to gather herbs without disturbing the surrounding plants, to carry water from the stream without spilling a drop, to move silently through the camp while the babies slept. The twins thrived under the tribe's communal care. Other mothers showed Sarah how to wrap them safely against her body for gathering expeditions, how to interpret their different cries, how to use plants for common ailments. The cradle boards proved perfect for keeping them safe while she worked, and soon she could tie them as expertly as any Crow mother. Grey Wolf remained a constant presence, though he kept a respectful distance. Still, Sarah often felt his eyes following her as she moved through the camp in her beaded moccasins. Sometimes their gazes would meet across the evening fires, and something unspoken would pass between them, a recognition of shared purpose, of growing trust. One afternoon, while the twins napped, Rising Star taught Sarah the meaning of the beadwork patterns on her moccasins. "These lines," she explained, tracing the parallel paths, "show 2 lives coming together, and these," she pointed to the surrounding symbols, "are the prayers we sow into every stitch. Protection, strength, harmony." Like Grey Wolf's medicine. Bundle? Sarah mused, remembering the sacred objects he carried. Rising Star smiled knowingly. All things can be medicine if we understand their power. These moccasins are your medicine now, helping you walk between two worlds. That evening, Sarah sat outside Mourning Dove's teepee, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The twins lay content in their cradle boards, while she worked on her own first attempt at beadwork, clumsy compared to the elegant designs on her moccasins, but improving with each careful stitch. Grey Wolf approached, carrying fresh meat from the day's hunt. He paused, noticing her beadwork. "You learn our ways quickly," he said softly. Sarah looked down at her moccasin-clad feet, then up at him. "Your people have shown me that there are many ways to walk through life. I'm grateful for this path, even if I'm still learning how to walk it." He nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in her words. The path teaches us, if we listen with our feet and our hearts. His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary before he moved on to distribute the meat to the cooking fires. Rising Star, watching from nearby, smiled to herself as she added another protection symbol to her beadwork. The moccasins had done their work, helping a lost soul find her footing in a new world, and perhaps leading two hearts toward a shared path. The first snow came early that year, blanketing the camp in hushed white. Inside Mourning Dove's teepee, Sarah watched as the elder woman unrolled a massive hide covered in intricate pictographs. Each image told a story: winters of plenty, summers of war, years marked by signs and wonders. "Every winter we add to the count," Mourning Dove explained, her fingers tracing the most recent images. "Each picture remembers what made that year different from all others." She pointed to a simple drawing of two small circles joined by a line. "The last time twins were born to our people, 30 winters ago. The twins, now 4 months old, were beginning to show distinct personalities. Faith, ever curious, reached for the hide from her cradle board, while Hope watched quietly, taking everything in with her father's thoughtful eyes." Sarah caught herself at that thought. She'd begun thinking of Grey Wolf as the twins' father, though he'd made no such claim. "This winter will be remembered," Mourning Dove continued, indicating a blank space on the hide. "The winter when two worlds came together through two spirits." She smiled at the twins. "But first, we must survive it." The snow deepened, and the camp moved to their winter grounds in a sheltered valley. Sarah learned to keep the teepee warm using different woods, to preserve meat in the old ways, to tell stories that made the long nights shorter. Grey Wolf taught the twins Crow words along with English, and their first smiles were gifts given equally to both cultures. One particularly bitter night, as wind howled outside, Grey Wolf arrived with extra furs. "The elk are moving down from the high country," he said, helping Sarah arrange the furs around the twins' cradle boards. "It will be a hard winter." Sarah caught his hand as he turned to leave. "Stay," she said softly. "Tell us a story from the winter count." He hesitated, only a moment before settling beside the fire. Mourning Dove, pretending to sleep in her corner, smiled secretly to herself. Grey Wolf's voice filled the teepee with tales of his people, of great hunts and vision quests, of peace pipes and war parties, of medicine powers and love stories. The twins drifted to sleep to the rhythm of his words, and Sarah found herself drawing closer, drawn by the warmth of his presence as much as the fire's heat. "Here," he said, pointing to a faded image on the hide, "is the story of my sister and me. The winter we were born, 2 eagles nested together in the council tree, a rare sign. The elders said we would bring change to our people." His voice caught slightly. "After she died, I thought the prophecy had died with her." Sarah touched his arm gently. "Perhaps the change just took longer than expected." Their eyes met across the firelight, and something shifted between them, like snow melting to reveal new growth beneath. Grey Wolf reached out, almost touching her cheek, then drew back as one of the twins stirred. The winter grew fiercer, forcing the entire camp to work together for survival. Sarah learned to read the weather in the way smoke rose from the teepees, to hear stories in the wind's howl, to see medicine in the way frost painted patterns on buffalo robes. Each evening, different families would gather in various teepees, sharing food and stories. The winter count hide traveled with these gatherings, its stories growing richer with each telling. Sarah began learning to read its pictographs, understanding that it was more than just history. It was the heart of the people, drawn on hide. One night, as a blizzard raged outside, Little Bird announced it was time for Sarah's story to be added to the winter count. But which symbol? The old woman mused, studying Sarah and the twins thoughtfully. Grey Wolf spoke from his place by the fire. 2 rivers, joining to form one stronger path, he suggested, his eyes meeting Sarah's. With 2 eagle feathers to eye. Mark the sacred spirits they carried. The entire teepee fell silent at his words. Everyone knew he had kept his sister's eagle feather in his medicine bundle since her death. To suggest using the eagle symbol again was to acknowledge something profound. Mourning Dove took up her bone needle and natural dyes. With practiced strokes, she began adding the new pictograph to the winter count hide. As Sarah watched their story take shape on the ancient record, she felt the last barriers around her heart begin to melt like spring snow. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the teepee, surrounded by family both old and new, Sarah had never felt more warm, more protected, more at home. Spring brought the first traders to the camp, along with news from the settlements. Grey Wolf was bartering for metal tools when he spotted it, a weathered piece of paper nailed to the trader's wagon. His heart grew cold as he recognized Sarah's face sketched in rough charcoal strokes. "Wanted," the poster declared. "Information regarding the whereabouts of Sarah Bennett and twin infants. Reward offered by Thomas Bennett and the Fort Bennett Parish." Below, in smaller letters, "Warning. Woman suspected of witchcraft and kidnapping. Approach with caution." Grey Wolf carefully tore the poster down while the trader was distracted. In the 6 months since Sarah's arrival, the twins had grown strong, their laughter a common sound in the camp. Faith took her first steps just days ago, with Hope watching intently, plotting her own path forward. The tribe had accepted them completely. How could they not, when the winter had proven the twins good medicine? But now, the past stretched out its fingers, threatening to shatter their hard-won peace. He found Sarah teaching the younger children a counting game, mixing Crow words with English numbers. The twins played nearby, protected by watchful tribal mothers. The sight strengthened his resolve. He would not let fear take this away. "The settlers search for you," he said quietly, showing her the poster. "Your husband leads them." Sarah's face paled as she took in the crude drawing, the accusations of witchcraft and kidnapping. "Thomas knows I would never—" She stopped, remembering the fear in her husband's eyes that terrible night. "He believes what he wants to believe." Little Bird, who had been watching the twins, spoke up. "The settlers' fear is a sickness. They see evil in what they do not understand. They will come," Grey Wolf said, "when the mountain pass is clear." The tribal council gathered that evening, the torn, wanted poster laying like a snake in their midst. Some argued for sending Sarah and the twins away to more distant camps. Others insisted on standing their ground. The tribe protected its own. "The settlers bring soldiers," Standing Bear warned. "They will not see us as separate from their witch hunt." "Then we make them see," Grey Wolf declared. "My sister's death taught me that running from fear only gives it power." Sarah stood, her voice steady despite her fear. "I won't bring war to people who showed me kindness when my own cast me out. If I must leave—" "No," Mourning Dove interrupted. She picked up the wanted poster, studying it before casting it into the fire. "You are Crow now. The twins are Crow. We do not abandon our people to satisfy settlers' dark dreams." The council argued long into the night. Sarah sat with the twins, watching the wanted poster curl and blacken in the flames. Faith reached for the fire, fascinated by the dancing light, while hope burrowed deeper into her mother's embrace. Grey Wolf moved to sit beside them, his medicine bundle hanging heavy against his chest. "Do you trust me?" he asked softly. Sarah met his gaze. In the firelight she saw not just the warrior who had saved her that stormy night, but the man who had spent months teaching her children to laugh without fear. "With our lives," she answered. He touched each twin's cheek gently, then Sarah's. "Then trust that I will find a way. The settlers must learn that their fears have no power here." The council finally reached their decision. They would not hide, but neither would they fight without cause. The tribe would continue its normal spring movements, but with extra scouts posted. Any approaching settlers would be met with diplomacy first. War would be the last resort. As the meeting dispersed, Grey Wolf watched Sarah carry the sleeping twins to their teepee. The wanted poster's ashes scattered in the night wind, carrying away the image of a frightened woman fleeing through the rain. In its place stood a mother who had found her strength, who had learned to walk in two worlds without losing her balance. He touched his medicine bundle, feeling the familiar shapes within. Tonight, he would make a new medicine. Not for war, but for peace. The settlers would come, but they would find more than what they sought. They would find a truth stronger than their fears. The sacred pipe lay wrapped in soft buckskin on Mourning Dove's lap, its carved bowl showing generations of ceremonial use. Outside, the camp prepared for the adoption ceremony, an event not seen since Grey Wolf's grandfather's time. The pipe would speak for all of them, tribe and settlers, living and dead, earth and sky. "Among our people," Mourning Dove explained as she unwrapped the pipe with reverent hands, "this pipe has witnessed every important promise. Treaties between tribes, marriages, the naming of children. Today it will witness your children becoming crow in truth, not just in love." Sarah watched as her twins were prepared by the tribal women. Faith and Hope, now nearly 8 months old, wore tiny buckskin dresses adorned with beadwork that had taken the women weeks to complete. Their dark eyes, so like their mother's, sparkled with excitement at all the attention. Grey Wolf entered the teepee, wearing his ceremonial dress. The sight of him made Sarah's breath catch. He looked every inch the warrior and leader he had become. His medicine bundle contained new objects now, she knew, including small tokens from each twin. "It is time," he said softly. "The tribal elders are gathered." Outside, the entire tribe had assembled in a great circle. At its center burned a sacred fire, its smoke rising straight and true in the still spring air. The elders sat in their place of honor, with Standing Bear holding the sacred pipe. Sarah carried Hope, while Grey Wolf carried Faith. As they entered the circle, a drum began to beat. Slow, steady, like a great heart pulsing. The twins, rather, than being frightened by the solemnity of the moment, seemed to understand its importance in their own way. Standing Bear rose, holding the pipe high. "Today we witness what the Great Spirit has already blessed," he proclaimed in Crow, with Grey Wolf translating softly for Sarah. "These children, born of one world but chosen by another, will be given their true names and their place among the people." The pipe was lit with an ember from the sacred fire. Standing Bear took the first ceremonial puff, offering the smoke to the 4 directions, to the Sky Father and to the Earth Mother. Then he passed it to Mourning Dove. "I stand as grandmother," she declared, taking her puff of the pipe. "I will teach these children the old ways, the women's medicine, the stories that make us who we are." The pipe passed to Little Bird. "I stand as teacher. I will show these children the plants that heal, the signs that guide, the wisdom of the land." It continued around the circle, each elder speaking their commitment to the twins' upbringing. When the pipe reached Grey Wolf, he stood tall. "I stand as father," he said, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "I will protect these. children with my life, guide them with my heart and love them as my own blood." His eyes met Sarah's as he spoke, and the meaning went deeper than the ceremony required. Finally, the pipe came to Sarah. Morning Dove had taught her the proper words in Crow, which she spoke with careful reverence. "I stand as mother, bringing these children from one world to another, asking the Great Spirit to bless their path between both. Let them take the best of each, creating something new and strong." Standing Bear lifted Faith first, holding her to the 4 directions. "You who came first into the world, bold and curious, I name you Bright Dawn, for you bring the promise of a new day." Hope was next, her quiet eyes taking in everything. "You who followed your sister, watching and knowing, I name you Silent Wisdom, for you carry the spirit of understanding." The pipe was passed around the circle once more, each person adding their prayers for the twins' futures. When it returned to Standing Bear, he held it high. "From this day forward, these children are Crow. Let any who would harm them answer to the entire tribe. Let any who would teach them hatred face the power of our love. Let any who would divide them remember this day, when the sacred pipe witnessed their adoption into our hearts, as well as our tribe." The drum beat grew stronger, joined by singing voices. Women came forward to dance with the twins, showing them the steps they would one day learn themselves. Men sang honor songs, pledging their protection. Children brought small gifts, beaded bracelets, tiny moccasins, special stones, and feathers. Through it all, Sarah felt tears running down her cheeks, not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude. The pipe's smoke lingered in the air, carrying their prayers skyward, binding them all together in ways no hatred could tear apart. Grey Wolf stood beside her, his hand finding hers as they watched their daughters being celebrated by their people. In that moment, with the sacred pipe bearing witness, they were no longer a settler woman and a Crow warrior. They were simply parents, watching their children being embraced by a love bigger than any boundary. The letter arrived with a supply trader, sealed with the United States Cavalry's official wax stamp. Standing Bear read it aloud to the council, his face growing darker with each word. Sarah sat at the edge of the circle, bright dawn and silent, Wisdom sleeping peacefully in their cradle boards beside her. By order of the United States government, Standing Bear translated, all Indian tribes in the territory are hereby notified that new settlements will be established along the western Creek valleys. Any tribes currently occupying these lands must relocate to designated areas within 3 months' time. The council erupted in angry murmurs. These were their summer hunting grounds, places their people had lived for generations. Grey Wolf's hand tightened on his medicine bundle as he studied the map included with the letter. They take more each season, he said quietly. Soon there will be nowhere left to move. Sarah felt the weight of divided loyalties. She understood the settlers' desire for land. Hadn't she once shared that dream with Thomas? But now she saw the other side, the deep connection her adopted people had to their ancestral territories. There's more, Standing Bear continued, holding up a second page. The Fort Bennett Parish has requested military assistance in locating a suspected witch and 2 stolen children believed to be hiding among the Indian tribes. All eyes turned to Sarah. Bright Dawn stirred in her sleep, reaching out until her tiny hand found her sister's. Even in dreams, the twins stayed connected. We are not hiding, Grey Wolf stated firmly. Sarah and the twins are Crow now. The adoption ceremony was witnessed by the sacred pipe. Little Bird spoke up from her place by the fire. The settlers do not respect our ceremonies. They see only what their fear shows them. The council debated long into the night. Sarah listened as they discussed options, moving to more remote territories, trying to negotiate with the cavalry, preparing for possible conflict. The twins slept on, unaware that their future was being decided around them. Finally, Grey Wolf rose to speak. I have watched our people retreat season after season, always hoping the settlers' hunger for land would be satisfied. But there is no satisfying such hunger. Perhaps it is time we showed them another way. "What do you propose?" Standing Bear asked. "Let me take a delegation to Fort Bennet, not to fight, but to talk. Let them see that their fears are empty. Let them see how two peoples can become one family." He gestured to Sarah and the twins. "Let them see the truth their own eyes deny." Sarah's heart clenched at the thought of returning to Fort Bennet. But Grey Wolf was right. Hiding would only feed the settlers' suspicions. The twins were living proof that love could bridge any divide. "I will go with you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Let them see the mother they branded a witch, and the people who showed her true Christian charity." Mourning Dove moved to stand beside her. "I will go as well. Let them see a Crow grandmother who loves these children as her own blood." One by one, others volunteered. Tribal elders willing to speak wisdom to fear, warriors willing to show restraint in the face of prejudice, women willing to demonstrate the strength of their community. Standing Bear held up the cavalry's letter. "One last time. This paper speaks of boundaries and divisions, but we know the earth cannot truly be divided. The same sun warms us all, the same rain feeds all our crops, the same stars guide all our dreams." He cast the letter into the fire, watching as the official seal melted away. "We will answer their written words with living truth. Let them see what is possible when hate is answered with hope." As the council dispersed, Grey Wolf knelt beside the twins' cradle boards. Silent Wisdom's eyes opened, regarding him with that deep, knowing look that had earned her name. Bright Dawn, true to her nature, reached for him with a sleepy smile. "We're doing the right thing," Sarah said softly, though uncertainty colored her voice. Grey Wolf took her hand, his grip warm and... "The right path is rarely the easy one, but we walk it together now." The cavalry's letter curled and blackened in the dying fire, its ashes rising to join the smoke of countless council fires before it. Tomorrow they would begin preparing for the journey to Fort Bennet. But tonight, Sarah watched her daughters sleep in their cradle boards, surrounded by the love of two worlds, and prayed that love would be enough to light the way forward. In the quiet hours before dawn, Sarah found Grey Wolf working alone by the dying fire. His hands moved with practiced care over a length of intricate beadwork, blues and whites, like the first morning sky, with shapes that seemed to dance in the firelight. When he saw her, he carefully wrapped the piece in soft leather, but not before she glimpsed the traditional patterns of a courtship necklace. "The children sleep?" he asked, his voice soft in the pre-dawn stillness. "Deeply," Sarah settled beside him, drawing her shawl closer against the morning chill. "Bright Dawn tried to stay awake for the night stars you promised to show her, but sleep won in the end. Like her mother, she fights even the natural order of things." His smile was tender in the fading firelight. Sarah touched the wrapped beadwork between them. "I've learned enough of your ways now to know what this means, and I have learned enough of settler ways to know it may be too soon." He met her eyes steadily. "You wore another man's ring not so long ago. I wore his ring, but never knew his heart." Sarah's fingers traced patterns in the dirt beside the fire. "With Thomas, everything was about appearances. What the community expected, what tradition demanded. I realized after you found us that night that I'd never truly known love until I saw it in how your people cared for my children." Grey Wolf unwrapped the beadwork, letting her see it properly. The patterns told a story, two paths joining, surrounded by symbols of strength and protection. At its center, two small circles connected by flowing lines represented the twins. "Among our people," he said, "a man proves his love not through words or promises, but through actions. I have watched you these past months, learning our ways, while keeping the best of your own. I have seen you turn fear into courage, hatred into understanding. The twins call me father now in their first words, but my heart claimed them long before their tongues formed the sound." Sarah touched the beadwork gently. "It's beautiful, like the woman it honors." Grey Wolf lifted the necklace. I offer this not to bind you, but to show you the path my heart sees, a path we could walk together, raising our daughters to be bridges between worlds. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in the same blues and whites as the beaded necklace. From inside the teepee came the soft sounds of the twins stirring, bright dawn's energetic movements, silent wisdom's quieter stretches. When Thomas and I married, Sarah said slowly, the pastor spoke of two becoming one, but he meant one had to disappear into the other. This, she touched the necklace again, this speaks of two remaining two, yet choosing to walk the same path. The Great Spirit made all things different for a reason, Grey Wolf agreed. Like the twins, each unique yet stronger together. The sounds from the teepee grew more insistent. Soon the daily routine would begin, meals to prepare, work to be done, preparations for the journey to Fort Bennett to be made. But in this moment, suspended between night and day, Sarah felt time slow to a single heartbeat. Among your people, she asked, how does a woman accept such an offer? Grey Wolf's eyes softened. She knows her own heart's path. Sarah turned, lifting her hair away from her neck. Then let your hands speak what our words cannot. With infinite gentleness, Grey Wolf placed the necklace around her throat. The beadwork settled against her skin like a promise, its weight as light as hope. When he finished, his hands lingered at her neck, warm and sure. Sarah turned back to face him, the rising sun catching the beads and making them shimmer. No words were needed. Their paths had joined like the flowing lines in the beadwork, separate but united, each made stronger by the other's presence. The twins' first morning calls broke the silence. Grey Wolf helped Sarah to her feet, there, hands lingering together. Come, she said, smiling. Your daughters want their father's morning songs. Together, they walked toward the teepee, where bright dawn and silent wisdom waited with their daily enthusiasm. The beaded necklace caught the light with each step, its patterns telling their story to anyone who knew how to read such things. A story of two worlds meeting, not in fear or hatred, but in the kind of love that builds bridges strong enough to bear any weight. The morning sun cast long shadows across the valley as the sentry's call echoed through the camp. Riders approaching. Sarah clutched silent wisdom closer to her chest, while bright dawn, secured in her cradleboard on Sarah's back, let out a questioning sound. Grey Wolf appeared at her side, his face tense. 6 men on horseback. Thomas Bennett leads them. Sarah's hand went instinctively to the beaded necklace at her throat. Through her moccasins, she could feel the earth's steady presence beneath her feet. She was not the same woman who had fled into the storm all those months ago. The riders approached slowly, Thomas in the lead. The rifle across his saddle gleamed dully in the morning light. The same weapon he'd used to defend their homestead, now carried with a darker purpose. Sarah recognized the other men. Pastor Matthews, 2 of the church elders, and 2 young men she'd known from Sunday socials. Standing Bear stepped forward to meet them, Grey Wolf at his side. Sarah remained near the teepees with the other women, but held her ground. She would not hide. We've come for my wife and children, Thomas announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent camp. His eyes found Sarah, widening at her appearance in crow dress, the twins openly displayed. Your wife found shelter with us, Standing Bear replied in careful English. She and the children are under our protection. Thomas's hand tightened on his rifle. Protection? From savages who've bewitched her further? His gaze fixed on the beaded necklace at Sarah's throat. See how they've marked her with their heathen ways. The only marks I bear, Sarah called, out her voice stronger than she felt, are the ones your fear left upon my heart, Thomas. Pastor Matthews urged his horse forward. Poor lost lamb, led astray by the devil's own servants, but it's not too late for redemption. Think of your immortal soul. I think of my children's lives, Sarah replied, which you would have ended with your superstitions and hatred. Thomas dismounted, rifle still in hand. They're my blood, my children, Blood. Grey Wolf's voice was quiet, but carried clearly. Where was blood's claim when you cast them into the storm? Where was a father's love when you chose fear over family? Don't. Speak to me of family, Indian. You've stolen mine. The rifle came up, but Grey Wolf didn't flinch. The only theft here is of truth, stolen by fear. Morning Dove emerged from her teepee, carrying something wrapped in soft hide. With deliberate steps, she approached Thomas. You speak of blood, she said in her careful English. See what your blood has become. She unwrapped the bundle, revealing the twins' first moccasins, tiny things adorned with both crow and settler symbols, crosses worked in traditional beadwork, morning stars designed like the quilting patterns Sarah had taught the women. These feet walk in two worlds now, Morning Dove continued. Would you make them choose between mother's love and father's pride? Thomas's rifle wavered. For the first time, he truly looked at his children. Silent wisdom regarded him with eyes. So like his mother's, while bright dawn reached out fearlessly, babbling, "Papa," to Grey Wolf, that word seemed to break something in Thomas. The rifle's muzzle dipped toward the ground. What have I done? He whispered. What fear taught you to do? Sarah said softly. She stepped forward, keeping the twins close. But fear can be unlearned, Thomas. These people have shown me that. Pastor. Matthews started to speak, but Thomas held up his hand. No. No more twisted scripture. I've seen enough darkness born from what we called light. He looked at his children again, then at Sarah's beaded necklace, understanding dawning in his eyes. They are loved here, he said, not quite a question. More than loved, Sarah answered. They are celebrated for what they are, not feared for what others imagine them to be. Thomas laid his rifle on the ground between them, a gesture understood. In any language, I cannot undo what fear made me do, but perhaps... He looked at Grey Wolf, then back to his children. Perhaps I can learn to see with clearer eyes. Grey Wolf stepped forward, picking up the rifle. With ceremonial gravity, he removed its firing pin and returned the weapon. Let this gun never again be raised in fear, he said. Let it stand instead as a marker of the day. Understanding began to grow. The tension slowly bled from the air. Pastor Matthews and his followers retreated, but Thomas remained, watching from a respectful distance as his daughters showed him their world. Silent wisdom, solemnly offering him a sacred feather. Bright. Dawn demonstrating her first crow dance steps. Sarah stood beside Grey Wolf, their shoulders touching. The morning sun caught the beadwork of her necklace, throwing rainbow light across the gun that now lay harmless across Thomas's saddle, a weapon transformed into a witness of change. The sacred peace pipe lay on a blanket between the two groups, settlers on one side, crow on the other. Sarah sat with Grey Wolf among the tribal elders, the twins playing quietly at their feet. Thomas had brought 9 settlers with him in time, not carrying weapons, but wearing uncertainty like heavy coats. In our way, Standing Bear explained, lifting the pipe, when men smoke together, their words become binding as blood. The smoke carries promises to the Great Spirit, who watches over all agreements. Pastor Matthews shifted uncomfortably. We have our own ways of sealing agreements. Then let us honor both, Grey Wolf suggested, producing a leather-bound Bible, the same one Sarah had left behind that stormy night. Let your holy book witness alongside our sacred pipe. Sarah watched Thomas's face as he recognized the Bible. She had asked Grey Wolf to retrieve it days ago, sensing that building a bridge between worlds would require foundations from both shores. Standing Bear lit the pipe with an ember from the sacred fire. First, we speak our truths. Then we find the path between them. The stories came slowly at first. The settlers spoke of their fears, of harsh winters, failed crops, the vast unknowns of frontier life. The crows spoke of their losses, hunting, grounds shrinking, diseases brought by white men, broken promises from the government. Fear makes us small, Morning Dove said, cradling silent wisdom in her lap. Look how these little ones show us a better way. The twins had indeed become the center of attention. Bright Dawn fearlessly toddled between the two groups, offering her toys to settler children who had come with their parents. Silent Wisdom watched everything with her characteristic gravity, but smiled at both tribal elders and settler women. With equal warmth, "They carry both worlds in their blood," Sarah said, touching the beaded necklace at her throat, "and both worlds have made them stronger." Thomas spoke up, his voice rough with emotion. "I let fear blind me to that strength. I saw difference as danger when I should have seen it as divine providence." Pastor Matthews frowned. "Divine providence? Among people who showed more Christian charity than we did," Thomas interrupted, "who took in a mother and children we cast out, who offered love where we offered only fear." The peace pipe had made its way around the Crow circle and now passed to the settlers. Some hesitated, but Thomas took it firmly, drawing the smoke and offering it to the four directions as he had been shown. "Let the smoke carry my shame and my hope together," he said. "Shame for what fear made me do, hope for what understanding might build." One by one, the other settlers followed his lead. Sarah felt Grey Wolf's hand find hers as they watched the pipe complete its circle. The twins had settled between them, Bright Dawn trying to braid her father's hair, while Silent Wisdom traced the patterns on her mother's moccasins. Standing, Bear placed the pipe beside the Bible. "Two sacred witnesses," he said. "Now we speak. Of tomorrow, the discussions were not easy. Boundaries needed to be drawn, agreements made about hunting grounds and water rights. But with the pipe's smoke still hanging in the air and the twins providing living proof of harmony's possibility, solutions began to emerge. The settlers would help the Crow protect their sacred sites from encroaching development. The Crow would teach the settlers about local plants and weather patterns, helping them survive the harsh territory. Trading agreements were proposed, cultural exchanges suggested. As the sun began to set, Pastor Matthews surprised everyone by asking to hold Silent Wisdom. The baby regarded him solemnly before reaching for his silver cross, then offering him her favorite wooden toy in exchange. "From the mouths of babes," the pastor murmured, looking at the simple gift with wondering eyes. "Perhaps we have all been children in our understanding." The peace pipe and Bible remained together on the blanket, symbols of two traditions finding common ground. Sarah watched her daughters, one dancing to an improvised tune combining a hymn and a Crow honor song, the other sharing her grandmother's beadwork with fascinated settler women, and felt hope rise like smoke into the evening sky. "Two worlds," Grey Wolf said softly, "but one family under the same stars." Sarah leaned against him, their beaded necklaces catching the last light together. "One family," she agreed, growing stronger through difference, not in spite of it. The mixed medicine pouch hung heavy at Sarah's waist as she hurried between the fever-stricken teepees. Inside, settler medicines shared space with tribal remedies, willow bark beside laudanum, sage bundles next to doctor's bandages. The summer. Heat had brought something worse than anyone had expected, a fever that didn't discriminate between Crow or settler blood. "Another child burns," Morning Dove called from a nearby teepee. Inside, a settler's son thrashed against his mother's arms while a Crow elder burned purifying herbs. Sarah knelt beside them, drawing out both a fever powder from her settler knowledge and the healing root Little Bird had taught her to use. "Together," she instructed the worried mother, "the white medicine brings down the fever, while our root medicine fights what causes it." The boy's mother nodded, fear erasing any prejudice she might have once held. Death had a way of making all ways equal. In the next teepee, Grey Wolf tended to a Crow child, while Thomas, who had been visiting when the sickness struck, helped prepare more medicine bundles. The two men worked in comfortable silence, their shared concern for the sick, transcending their past conflicts. "Like this," Grey Wolf demonstrated, showing Thomas how to wrap the sacred herbs. "The wrapping itself is part of the medicine, each fold a prayer for healing." Sarah paused in the teepee entrance, struck by the sight of her past and present working. in harmony. Silent wisdom dozed in her cradleboard nearby, while bright dawn helped carry water to the sick, her little legs tireless in their service. Dr. Harrison had arrived 3 days ago, summoned by Thomas when the fever first appeared, in the settlement. Rather than dismiss the tribal remedies, he had worked alongside Little Bird, combining their knowledge. Now their mixed medicine pouch represented hope for both communities. The fever breaks faster when we use both ways, Dr. Harrison had observed, writing careful notes about the tribal remedies. There's wisdom in these ancient methods we'd be fools to ignore. A cry went up from the edge of camp, another sick child being brought in. Sarah recognized the Miller family, who had once shown her kindness before fear turned them away. Now they carried their youngest daughter, her face flushed with fever. "Sarah," Mrs. Miller called out, her voice thick with tears and memory. "They say you know both medicines now. Please." Sarah opened her medicine pouch, its contents rattling. "Like prayers, bring her to the healing teepee. All children are one family here." Inside the large teepee designated for healing, settler children lay beside Crow children, their parents sharing worried looks and whispered prayers that needed no translation. Little Bird moved among them, burning sage and cedar, while Dr. Harrison administered his medicines with careful precision. Grey Wolf appeared with fresh water and clean cloths. "Like the year my sister was taken," he said softly to Sarah. "But this time we have stronger medicine, not just in our pouches, but in our unity." Sarah touched the beaded necklace she wore, then reached for both the willow bark tea and Little Bird's sacred root. As she worked, she heard prayers in English mixing with Crow healing songs, neither cancelling the other, but weaving together into something new and powerful. The Miller child's fever broke near sunset, around the same time. As 2 Crow children began to show improvement, no one questioned which medicine had worked better. They simply gave thanks in their own ways, the gratitude genuine regardless of its form. "We should write this down," Dr. Harrison said, watching Sarah prepare another batch of mixed medicine. "Both kinds of healing preserved together." "Our people carry medicine in stories," Little Bird replied. "But perhaps it is time for both ways to walk the same path." Sarah looked around the healing teepee as night fell. Mothers from both communities had begun sharing watches, taking turns cooling fevered brows and humming lullabies in different languages. Their mixed medicine pouch had become more than just a collection of remedies. It was a symbol of what they could achieve together. "The twins sleep deeply tonight," Grey Wolf said, joining her by the medicine fire. "A good sign that the worst has passed." Sarah leaned against him, exhausted but hopeful. "They've never known to see any difference between the ways of healing. Perhaps they're teaching us the most powerful medicine of all." Their mixed medicine pouch swung gently from her belt, its contents shifting like the changing seasons. Within it, 2 traditions had become one healing power, stronger together than either could be alone. The war shield hung in Grey Wolf's teepee, its surface a testament to both tradition and change. Beside the traditional buffalo hide and eagle feathers, new symbols had been added: a cross worked in beadwork, a pioneer wagon wheel, 2 infant handprints in red ochre. Sarah watched as Grey Wolf traced the twins' tiny prints, his face grave in the morning light. "Cavalry scouts," he reported. 2 days' ride from here, they carry orders to clear all tribes from the territory." Thomas, who had become a regular visitor to the camp, sat with them in council. "They won't distinguish between those who've made peace and those who haven't. To them, all Indian lands are just spaces on a map waiting to be filled." The news spread through both communities. The fever crisis had bound them together in unexpected ways, and now the settlers who had found healing among the Crow faced a difficult choice. Pastor Matthews arrived with his own troubling report. "The cavalry commander sends word that any settlers found living among Indians will be considered hostiles." He looked pointedly at Sarah and the twins. "They speak of rescuing those who've been influenced." Grey Wolf's hand went to his war shield. They would take our family apart again? Not just our family, Sarah said, watching through the teepee entrance as settler and crow children played together, their friendships forged during the fever days. They would break all the bonds we've built. Standing Bear called a joint council of settler and tribal leaders. The war shield was placed in the center of the circle, its new symbols gleaming. In the old days, he said, this shield protected only our warriors. Now it must stand for something greater, Thomas spoke up. We've lived as neighbors these past months, shared medicines, skills, sorrows and joys. My grandchildren are as much crow as settler. He looked at Bright Dawn and Silent Wisdom, who sat solemnly in their cradle boards. I won't let any army tear that apart. Plans were made quickly. The settlers would report that the crow had moved on, while secretly helping them maintain their presence in hidden valleys. Trading would continue through secret routes. Children would still learn from both worlds, though more discreetly. But what of those who come looking? Pastor Matthews asked. We cannot hide an entire tribe forever. Grey Wolf lifted his war shield. Perhaps it is time to fight not with weapons, but with truth. Let them see what we have built here. Sarah understood. Show them the mixed medicine pouches that saved their children. Show them the peace pipe and Bible that witness our agreements. Show them the future we're creating. The council agreed. When the cavalry arrived, they would find not hostile tribes or compromised settlers, but a community that had discovered a different way forward. The next days were busy with preparation. The main camp was moved to a more defensible position. While maintaining its connection to the settlement, signal systems were established, using both tribal methods and settler innovations. The war shield's medicine was renewed with prayers from both traditions. Sarah watched as Grey Wolf added new protection symbols to the shield. Settler crosses intertwined with crow medicine wheels, creating patterns of harmony rather than division. What do you see in our future? She asked him, as Bright Dawn tried to help paint and Silent Wisdom studied the designs with her characteristic intensity. I see a shield that protects more than just warriors, he replied. It protects an idea that different peoples can become one family under the same sky. Thomas joined them, carrying supplies from the settlement. The cavalry will expect us to choose sides, he said. They don't understand that we already have. We've chosen each other. The war shield caught the setting sun, its symbols casting shadows that seemed to dance together. Sarah touched the twins' handprints, feeling the future beneath her fingers. Let them come, she said softly. We'll show them a strength they never expected to find, the strength of two worlds standing as one. The wedding blanket lay across Mourning Dove's lap, each stitch telling a story. She had worked through the winter nights to create it, weaving together crow patterns and settler quilting designs. The center bore two parallel paths joining into one, surrounded by protective symbols from both traditions, crosses and medicine wheels, morning stars and eagle feathers. In our way, Mourning Dove explained to Sarah, the blanket wraps two lives together, keeping them warm through all seasons. She traced the intricate patterns, but for you and my son, it must carry both ways, both stories. The wedding would be like the blanket, two traditions woven into something new. Pastor Matthews had agreed to speak the Christian words, while tribal elders would perform the crow ceremonies. The entire settlement would attend, not as observers, but as family. Sarah stood in Mourning Dove's teepee as women from both communities helped her prepare. Her dress combined settler white with crow beadwork, the designs matching her courtship necklace. Bright Dawn and Silent Wisdom, now sturdy toddlers, wore matching dresses that bridged both worlds. "Mama pretty," Bright Dawn declared, touching the beadwork with careful fingers. Silent Wisdom simply smiled her knowing smile, already understanding. The deeper meaning of the day. Thomas arrived, looking uncomfortable in his Sunday best, but determined. "The pastor's ready," he said, then paused, seeing Sarah in her wedding clothes. "You look at peace, more than you ever did with me." "Different paths lead to different destinies," Sarah replied gently. Yours led you to understanding mine. To hear, he nodded, then reached into his coat. I brought something, found it in the old family Bible. He handed her a pressed flower, a reminder of her first wedding. But instead of bringing pain, it felt like closing a circle. Outside, the wedding blanket had been hung between two poles, creating an archway under which the ceremony would take place. Grey Wolf waited there, wearing traditional Crow regalia, accented with a settler's vest that Thomas had given him. The twins led the procession, scattering a mixture of settler rose petals and sacred Crow herbs. Sarah walked between two worlds, Thomas on one side honoring her past, Mourning Dove on the other embracing her future. Pastor Matthews spoke first, his words softer than they had once been. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all. Things endures all things. He looked at the gathered crowd, settler and Crow together, and added, Love knows no boundaries but those we place before it. Standing Bear followed with the Crow ceremonies, speaking of how two rivers join to make one stronger flow, how two trails merge to form one true path. The wedding blanket was wrapped around Sarah and Grey Wolf's shoulders, binding them together. Let this blanket be your shelter, Mourning Dove said in both English and Crow. Let its patterns remind you that difference brings strength when woven with love. Grey Wolf spoke his vows in both languages, promising to honor both the paths that had brought them together. Sarah responded in kind, her Crow words carrying the strength of hard-won understanding. The twins, caught up in the ceremony's power, spontaneously began to sing, a mix of the hymns Sarah had taught them and the Crow songs they had learned at Grey Wolf's knee. The crowd fell silent, hearing in their innocent voices the future they were all building. Two worlds, one family, Grey Wolf whispered as he and Sarah shared the traditional wedding cup. Like the patterns in our blanket, the celebration that followed knew no cultural bounds. Settler fiddles played alongside Crow drums. Children taught each other games from both traditions. The feast combined foods from both cultures, each dish a testament to shared wisdom. As evening fell, Sarah and Grey Wolf sat wrapped in their wedding blanket, watching their people, for they were now all one people, celebrate together. The twins had fallen asleep between them, silent wisdom clutching her father's medicine bundle, while bright dawn wore her mother's old cross. Look, Grey Wolf said softly, pointing to where the sunset painted the sky. Two eagle feathers floated down, landing crossed upon the wedding blanket. A sign? Sarah asked. A blessing, he replied, from all our ancestors walking whatever paths led us here. The wedding blanket held them close as darkness fell, its woven patterns promising shelter for all the seasons ahead. The treaty document lay unrolled on a table before them, its official letterhead bearing the seal of the United States government. Captain James Harrison of the 7th Cavalry, Dr. Harrison's younger brother, had brought it himself, along with a full company of soldiers waiting on the outskirts of the settlement. The terms are non-negotiable, the captain said, though his eyes kept drifting to where settler and Crow children played together in the street. All Indian tribes must relocate to the designated reservations within 30 days. Sarah stood beside Grey Wolf, the twins secure in their cradle boards at Mourning Dove's house. The entire settlement had gathered for this moment, settlers and Crow together, their lives now so intertwined that separation would be like tearing a blanket. Down its center, Thomas stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of his position as town leader. Captain, what you see here isn't what you expect. We're not two separate communities living side by side. We're one people now. Impossible, the captain scoffed. The Department of Indian Affairs. Come, Sarah interrupted. Let us show you what's possible when fear gives way to understanding. They led the captain through the settlement. At the schoolhouse, settler and Crow children learned together, sharing stories from both traditions. In the fields, tribal farming methods had been combined with settler techniques, producing better yields than either had managed alone. Dr. Harrison met them at the infirmary, where he worked alongside Little Bird. "Remember that fever last summer, James?" he said to his brother. "We saved more lives by combining our medicines than we ever could have alone." The captain's rigid posture began to soften as they showed him the trading post, where both cultures' goods were sold. The church where Pastor Matthews now incorporated Crow wisdom into his sermons. The communal gathering places where both peoples celebrated together. "And here," Grey Wolf said, producing their own document, a treaty written in both English and Crow, witnessed by both the peace pipe and the Bible. "We have already made our own agreements. We live as one people under the same sky." Standing Bear spoke up. "Your government speaks of civilization. Look around you. Is this not what civilization should be? Different peoples learning from each other, growing stronger together?" The captain studied the peaceful scene before him. Settler women learning beadwork from Crowcraft's women, tribal hunters teaching young settler men their sustainable methods, children playing games that borrowed from both cultures. "The orders are clear," he said, but with less conviction. "All Indians must what?" Thomas interrupted. "Must abandon the homes they've built with us? Must take our grandchildren from us?" He gestured to where the twins were now approaching, holding hands as they always did when facing something new. Bright Dawn looked up at the captain with Grey Wolf's fearless gaze. "Are you coming to our celebration?" she asked innocently. "Grandfather." "Thomas says everyone is welcome when we dance together." Silent Wisdom simply handed the captain a small object, a beaded cross she had made herself, combining symbols from both her heritages. The captain held the gift, looking from the children to the treaty document and back again. This is not what we expected to find." "No," Sarah agreed. "It's what we've built instead of what fear told us to expect." She touched her wedding blanket, worn as a shawl, against the spring chill. "And it's stronger than any division your treaty could create." Dr. Harrison placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "James, remember what Father used to say? Sometimes the best path forward isn't the one on the map." The captain looked at the official treaty again, then at the community's own agreement. Around him, settler and Crow families watched with quiet dignity, their unity more powerful than any written law. Finally, he straightened. "I will need to report this to my superiors. This situation is unprecedented." "Then report the truth," Grey Wolf said. "Tell them what you've seen here, not just peace between peoples, but a new way of being one people." The captain rolled up the government treaty, his decision visible in the set of his shoulders. "I'll need documentation, evidence of how this works, proof that it can succeed." "We have stories," Standing Bear offered. "And records," Pastor Matthews added. "And living proof," Sarah said, drawing the twins close, "of what love can build when fear steps aside." 10 years had passed since the captain's visit when the traveling photographer arrived in the settlement. His wagon studio drew curious onlookers, both settler and Crow, but it was the notion of capturing time in a single image that fascinated the most. "A family portrait," Grey Wolf announced, surprising Sarah. He had always been hesitant about settler technologies, preferring the stories painted on winter count hides. "For our daughters to show their children someday." The entire extended family gathered for the occasion. Sarah wore her wedding blanket as a shawl, its patterns now softened by a decade of use. Grey Wolf dressed in full Crow regalia, but wore the silver watch Thomas had given him, a symbol of how time had brought them all together. Bright Dawn and Silent Wisdom, now 12, stood tall in dresses that combined settler cuts with Crow beadwork. Bright Dawn had grown into her name, her smile as radiant as ever, while Silent Wisdom's quiet understanding had deepened into true insight. "The whole family," Sarah insisted, and so they all came. Mourning Dove in her finest dress, Thomas with his grey hair and gentle smile, Dr. Harrison and Little Bird, who had married 3 summers ago, Pastor Matthews, who now blessed children in 2 languages, and standing bear whose wisdom had guided them through every challenge. The photographer seemed bemused by the unusual group, but positioned them carefully. Perhaps the Indian members should stand in back. No, Silent Wisdom said firmly, one of her rare spoken interventions. We stand as we are, one family. And so they did. Grey Wolf and Sarah sat central, with the twins standing between them. Morning Dove and Thomas flanked them, their own improbable friendship a testament to change. The others arranged themselves naturally, each finding their place in the family circle. As the photographer prepared his equipment, Sarah remembered another portrait, the one in her family Bible that had shown only stern faces and proper poses. How different this would be, with children of both peoples crowding in, with trading post goods and tribal crafts displayed proudly together, with faces that showed the joy of chosen family. Hold still now, the photographer called from beneath his black cloth. This is a moment for history. Silent Wisdom touched the medicine bundle she now wore, a gift from her father, carrying both her parents' medicines. Bright Dawn straightened the beaded cross at her throat, her fingers tracing the pattern she had designed herself. Tell us a story while we wait, one of the younger children called out. A common request in their blended community. Tell about the storm, another added. They had all heard it countless times, but some stories needed retelling. Sarah caught Grey Wolf's eye, seeing in it the same love that had offered shelter on that desperate night. Once, she began, there was a mother who thought she had lost everything, but she had only lost what fear had built, Grey Wolf continued, so that love could build something stronger. And the twins, the children prompted. The twins showed two peoples that difference was never something to fear, Silent Wisdom said softly, but something to celebrate, Bright Dawn added, with her characteristic enthusiasm. The photographer emerged from his cloth. Ready now? Show me what this family means to you. In that moment, as the lens opened to capture their image, Sarah felt the weight of their journey. From the night she fled with newborns into the storm, to this day of sunshine and celebration. From fear to understanding, from division to unity, from loss to more love than she could have imagined. The flash powder flared, fixing their family in time forever. Settler and crow, young and old, all bound together by choice and love and the courage to imagine a different way. Later, when the portrait was finished, they hung it in the community meeting house beside the winter Count Hyde that told their story in pictures. The twins' children would study both, learning how their family had built a bridge between worlds strong enough to carry generations forward. Look, Silent Wisdom said that evening, studying the portrait with her mother's careful gaze. You can see it in everyone's eyes? See what? Sarah asked, though she already knew. The story we're still writing, her daughter replied. The one that says love is stronger than fear, family is more than blood, and the bravest path is the one that brings people together. Grey Wolf wrapped the wedding blanket around Sarah's shoulders as they stood before the portrait. After all these years, its patterns still spoke of two paths joining to form something stronger, something new, something true. What do you see when you look at it? He asked softly. Sarah leaned against him, watching their daughters point out details to their younger siblings, children of both peoples who had never known to see any difference between them. I see the future, she answered, and it looks like love,